letting you in. Take a look at you and start to lose my balance. What am I falling into? This feels like something new. I've seen a lot of views, but they were nothing like this. The way you do what you do, I think you're something brand new.
Digitalisation. Are we wired for tomorrow? We've talked a lot already this morning and in other sessions as well about digitalisation, the investment that's needed, the policy, the regulation, and the speed in which things will need to change, and what is needed within the industry and the wider industry in which it services. So the title of this session is Wired for Tomorrow. So let me just ask you, with a show of hands, do you feel this industry is already wired for tomorrow? Who feels that actually, yeah, we are there with digitalisation? You think so, sir? You are the only one in the room. Two of you. Okay, maybe you know something the rest of us don't. Who feels that there is still a long way to go before the industry is, yeah, there we go. And maybe the rest of the room somewhere in the middle. Good strides made, but more to do. So what you are going to hear now this afternoon is a brand new report on digitalisation, the state of the industry, what needs to be done, and how it can be done. So that's where we're going to take you this afternoon. But we thought we would start by getting the views of the industry on digitalisation. So we have brought to this stage the Senior Director of Digital Transformation Policy at Digital Europe, which is, as I'm sure you're aware, the leading digital technology industry association representing some 45,000 digital companies right across Europe. So they have a great voice on this. So ladies and gentlemen, to give us a snapshot of this area, please welcome to the stage Ray Pinto. Thanks, Ray. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for leaving the sun and food and ice cream to hear me. I've been listening to all the speeches today, and I have to say one that really stood out was the CEO of PPC, because he went into a lot of detail of how they were going to use digital technologies. What did I hear? I heard that he's preparing his company here in Greece to be able to bring renewables onto that grid, to get that flexibility, to make resilience, to make security, to prepare for what eventually may be cyber attacks, and drive down costs and make sure blackouts don't hit his country, and many other things that digital does. You're going to hear in the next panel in far more detail the benefits of digital. I'm not going to touch upon it too much here, but I wanted to highlight primarily what you can see in regards to that journey in your transformation. There's one person over there who said that digital transformation is already here for the energy sector. There he is. And I think it still has a way to go, but those companies that do take on that transformation will do it very quickly if they can implement that, and they'll derive some benefits very quickly as well, because it will lead to high levels of efficiency. So, but before I begin, who is Digital Europe? So, as was highlighted, we cover a lot of corporate members. We have national trade associations in all the member states. We're very happy to be on stage, and I want to thank Eurelectric for inviting us to be here. My Director General apologizes that she couldn't be here herself, and I hope I'm a good stand-in. But you can see from our membership, we go beyond just digital companies. If you look at that logo cloud, you will see that we have banks, we have pharmaceuticals, we have medtech companies, we have transport companies like Airbus and BMW. Why are they members of us? Well, because they have realized over the course of the past 7 years that they too are digital companies. And they will be affected by a wide range of new digital policies that are coming into enforcement over the next couple of years. They've all been published. You will not feel it now, but you will feel it, trust me, in the next couple of years. So we've already talked about this and our membership size and the different vertical areas that we represent. Here is just a sight as to what you can expect to see, the tsunami of digital regulation. I would love to say that it is forever done and there'll never be more regulation that will be coming down the line. I highly doubt that because we have noticed that there's a lot of politics that have taken over in creating a lot of these different regulations. I'm not saying that we don't need the regulations, we do, but it has to be done in a way that can ensure we have the innovation that is driving here in Europe. We have the startups that are creating, valuable different innovation technologies. We have companies that want to stay here in Europe. Now, I am not sure when I look at this map, and I was asked by the press just right before this, if I was confident that companies can grow and thrive here. I'm cautiously optimistic, but there is going to be now an effort on a very massive scale over the next couple of years on the implementation of these different areas. And we have some new areas that are coming up with the next commission. For example, the GDPR has to be reviewed. Now, will it be a very focused review, or will politics again drive it to be a massive reopening of the GDPR? I definitely hope it's the former, and I really hope that we can focus on implementation. But some areas to call out is we have the AI Act, which again was a regulation that probably went a bit too far in the compliance and the scope that it's covering. What was supposed to be a look at high-risk classification became more general purpose with a far broader scope, which means that many, many companies, especially the small ones in Europe, will have to comply upwards to possibly 300,000 euros just to meet what this new regulation will require. That number, if anyone's wondering, was from the impact assessment from the European Commission itself when it first started out on the original draft. The draft that has gone through Parliament and Council is far more burdensome, and I imagine that number is probably getting closer to 500,000 that each SME is going to have to comply to. Many of these different regulations, like the Cyber Resilience Act, is not harmonized, even though, oddly enough, these regulations, their sole purpose is for harmonization. What are we going to see? We're going to see member states are implementing it differently. They'll have the leeway to do so, and they'll have their own different rules and reporting requirements and compliance requirements. Each one of these is going to do that. So it's going to be a challenging road ahead for many of you who want to embrace these digital technologies. So it's important that you watch these very closely because it will affect your company. I know you're big state corporations and you work very closely with the government, but many of these EU rules will impact you in some shape or form. I don't want to finish on a negative note because I already see a lot of people looking very sad and they're like, oh, I wish I was outside having that ice cream. So I want to leave you a little bit on something that's a little bit more upbeat. Europe, right, and this is one thing I want you to remember. Europe is not behind globally in the energy ecosystem. Europe actually is doing extremely well when it comes to business and business technologies and adoption, right? When we think about business to consumer, yes, Europe fell behind. But when you think about business to business technologies and the size of the market, well, guess what? The EU is way ahead of the game. If it's in pharmaceuticals, if it's in transport, if it's in automotive, if it's in manufacturing, right? If it's in energy. So this is really our race to lose, right? And if you look at the market size, business to consumer is roughly a 3 trillion market size. For business to business, it's over 13 trillion. Why do we focus so much energy on the politics for consumer technologies? Well, because it's sexier. But we need to shift that dialogue. We need to make sure the officials are looking at the business-to-business spaces, harmonizing those standards, the certification, the cybersecurity requirements, and making sure that Europe is working together. We've heard that again and again. It's working together as a union. There is no digital single market. Far too many bits of fragmentation and members wanting to do it on their own. But we did see in the COVID that many of the member states came together. They did, and they worked together. We need to have that same enthusiasm as well. When we look at these technologies, these are transformative technologies, right, that are going to change the sector that you operate in, on the customers that engage with you, on the stakeholders across your supply system, right? You're looking at cloud, and it's hard to incorporate cloud because you're saying, well, that's not CapEx. But cloud is the ability to store all that data and to create massive innovation, train foundational AI algorithms, right, and make sure that you're driving innovation from your ecosystems, reducing cost, and making sure services to your customer is top-notch. There are all these other different areas that Europe is now looking and identified as growth areas and key technologies that they must invest in. Technologies that will also protect the grid and your businesses from any attacks that are unfortunately increasingly happening day by day. These are all different areas that our trade association is focused on. We are going to be having a series of dialogues with executives. We're going to be inviting the energy players. I definitely want Eurelectric to walk side by side with us as we look at these different areas. And I just want to leave this slide. I have 3 minutes. I'm going to finish earlier. But I want you to have a look at this. These are all different areas that can be the drivers for this transformation. And it's a lot of very technical, difficult areas. We need proper data cooperation. Even though we have the Data Act, we're very far from that. We need data flow internationally. Again, a huge, difficult thing to overcome and requires a lot of investment in international fora like G7 and the B20 and all these other areas. We need skills. We need to make sure that we have the right regulation. We need to make sure there's the incentives for investment, right? And we need connectivity. And we have to make sure we put our officials to task with KPIs. We have our paper that we've produced with very, very clear KPIs, what we want to see as an industry by 2030. I encourage you to have a look at that. And I definitely want to wish you all a great afternoon and the next couple of days in having these discussions. But tell your officials, think digital, make sure digital is central to the work that they're doing, and realize that the benefits are there if we embrace them. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you so much. So the view there of the industry, or lots and lots of different parts of the industry. What we are going to do now is look at the current state of digitalisation for DSOs. And this is a landmark report that Eurelectric has put together with Accenture to look at the state at the moment, what needs to change, if indeed anything does need to change, how it needs to change, and how to get from A to B and over what time frame. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is our digitalisation session. Very pleased to say that from Accenture, we have with us today the EMEA T&D lead for utilities at Accenture to take us through the report, Pim Spierenburg.
First of all, thanks for Eurelectric to inviting us to actually do the presentation around Wired for Tomorrow, right? And before I dive into the overall contents of the report and the study that we've done, I want to provide some context, right? If we look at the overall EU ambition, right, to decarbonize, to actually go to net zero, right, and actually reduce our carbon footprint in the European Union by 55% by 2030, right, and be completely net zero by 2050, and then look also to the amount of increase in renewable generation as an ambition in Europe, right, by 43% by 2030. Combine that with the commitment of COP28 to increase the amount of renewables by 300% by 2030, and combine that with the ban of internal combustion engines in the European Union or new cars and personal cars by 2030, you can see the amount of work that is actually being ahead of us. Combine that with topics like aging networks. Combine that with topics like scarcity of talent, right? Supply chain disruption. And you can kind of see that distribution companies have a huge amount of work and challenges ahead of them, right? And what we have identified, and I think that's also in previous speeches on this stage earlier this morning, we heard about the 3 I's, which was about implementation, investment, and infrastructure. And what we've identified is also the megatrends around 3 Ds, right? So besides the 3 I's, I would also like to introduce the 3 Ds. Decarbonization by electrification, right? Decentralization of generation, and last but not least, digitization, right? And because we see that digitization plays a crucial role for grid companies to keep pace with the energy transition and the overall decarbonization, Accenture worked together with Eurelectric in the study that I'd like to present to you, Wired for Tomorrow. And I'm aware I only have 10 minutes to present, so I'm not able to provide a whole lot of detail. I'll invite you to read the report in all due time, but I definitely want to at least give you a presentation of what we've done, right? And that leads to basically the 4 main questions that we have tackled within this collaborative study. First of all, is digitalization right? Are we on pace? And is the digital basically the question that was initially asked by Sasha on stage, right? How far are we with digitalization of the grids, right? Second of all, what are the main challenges that we see currently? And the third question, how can we accelerate? And the fourth question, how can technology help us to further digitize, right? And how have we taken care of this study is basically saying, well, the main goals that we had, right, as said, is answering those questions. And how have we done that? Right, is by working together with a whole group of collaborating distribution companies, by interviewing them, by sending surveys, right, mapping a digital journey and a digital North Star, and basically how to progress from where we currently are to where we eventually want to be in order to keep on accelerating the net zero transition. Because we all agree, right, and that's something that has been substantiated by the International Energy Agency, right, is that the grid is in the middle, and the grid kind of set the pace of the overall decarbonization, right? So the method is clear, right? We work together with not only distribution companies, but also with technology partners, such as Siemens, who will just be after me on stage, right? Working with other market players to assess the current state of where we are, right? And the outcomes of the study are basically a digital maturity assessment. So what is the digital maturity across all the participating distribution companies, provide some key insights. What is driving digitalization, right? What are the main things? Where do we currently see it? And last but not least, a technology roadmap. First of all, who participated? Right? We had 31 distribution companies participating in this overall study, right, serving over 80 million customers, right? And you can see they actually are from 21 different countries. And we basically serve the whole population, serve about 30% of the entire European customer base. And what's also interesting is that about 60% of these participating distribution companies already cope with a large amount of distributed energy resources penetration. That is something you need to keep in mind, right? I don't want to give it away immediately, but it's something that you need to bear in mind because there is a relation, right, with DER integration, EV adoption, and the way that distribution companies are actually digitizing in this way. Right, so over the course of about 6 months, a team of Eurelectric worked together with a team of Accenture, surveying, right, interviewing all the participating distribution companies. Right, and the way that we've done that is focusing on 4 areas around digitization. Right, first of all, we focus on building of the grid. So think about grid calculation, think about network modeling, right? Digital twin that is adopted within the actual build of the grid. Then the second topic, how to operate your grid. right? Which is, in fact, grid operations. We talked about topics like smart metering. We talked about new capability, flexibility management, and a new capability like system operations, right? Although we talk about operations and network operations a lot, what we currently see, because of the basically increase of distributed energy resources, distribution companies need to go to a transition, and they are actually transitioning at this moment from network operation companies to actually become much more system operation companies, right? And we've emphasized, what do you need, right? We already had, early this morning, we had a poll about infrastructure and flexibility, right? If you look at infrastructure, that's part of build. Flexibility and how to manage flexibility is part of operate, right? And requires new insights and new capabilities to set up. And we emphasize, how can digital help? And last but not least, how to maintain your grid, right? Think about fields for the enablement. Think about asset performance management, right? How do you go from time-based maintenance to condition-based maintenance? What is important? And in the middle, as you can kind of see, is data-driven. What kind of platforms do you need? What kind of platforms do you already have? And how do these platforms evolve, right? And will eventually help to further increase and improve the build, operate, and maintain, right? Basically, the value chain of distribution companies. And that's kind of what we emphasized on all our questions, in all our surveys, and eventually also in the roadmap. And these are the key takeaways, right? I'll give you some time to kind of digest the numbers, right? Main thing, if you look at this company, you can look at this slide and this picture, you already see one thing, right? Operate and maintain are kind of level, right? They are part of emerging digital maturity, right? Build is lagging a bit behind, right? And data-driven technology is actually higher. So what is the main story and main conclusion that you can draw from this company? At least that's what I did together with the team. First of all, when I saw this picture, immediately said, well, technology is there, right? We have the platforms, the technology is there, but it seems that the adoption on the business side is kind of lagging behind. The interesting topic is that on operate, we already see an increase of digital maturity. And the most interesting part, if you actually dive down into the report, as I did, and you will have the opportunity to do so later on, is that especially on operate, the digital maturity of companies that cope with large pools of distributed energy resource and large pools of electric vehicles, the digital maturity in operate is bigger. Why? Because they need to be able to forecast what's happening on the demand and on the generation of medium voltage levels, right? Or on the connection between high voltage and medium voltage. They need to be able to predict what's going to happen. What do you need in that case? You need more data. In order to have that data, you need to better digital adoption, right? To better operate your grid. Same thing about maintain, right? And what we've seen earlier this morning is that currently the free eyes implement, invest, and infrastructure will have a knock-on effect on the digital maturity of build. Right? There is a direct correlation between the business adoption of digital and the actual value and the pressure and the challenges that distribution companies see. Right? So what we currently predict, right, is that overall, with the energy transition going on, with increased amount of flexibility that is required, with huge investments that are going to be made in build, that the overall digital maturity across all these three build, operate, and maintain topics will increase over the next couple of years, and they need to increase in the next couple of years. Because combined with scarcity of talent, combined with disruption in supply chain, we believe that digital is able to actually accelerate existing infrastructure build. That is something that we already seen in countries where we currently help our clients setting up digital backbones for large HVDC projects, right? Where we actually see the way that the companies, the client companies, so the asset owners are actually working together with OEMs and EPCs on digital engineering is actually increasing, right? The overall efficiency to actually execute these large capital infrastructure programs is actually improving, right? I've got 4 minutes left. And these are the 6 key insights that I want to spend the last bit of my presentation on before I hand it over to the panel. Right, digital is seen as a must-have, right? It's a tool in a proven ecosystem to actually accelerate on everything that you do, right? Think about, for instance, active grid modeling. Think about topics like digital twin, right? Digital twins, I agree, it's a buzzword, right? And I think if you ask all the people in this room a definition of a digital twin, you get amount of outcomes of people in the room. Everybody has the same topic around digital twins. The main thing is, it's going to be of crucial importance to have a virtual digital representation of your grid itself to start initially having the idea what your grid is all about, right? But eventually also to be able to simulate, to do active grid planning based upon digital information. Second, right, power of regulation. I think the previous speaker already talked about regulation around digital, but think about it. It can actually accelerate digital maturity, but it could also impede. Right? I think we had regulation in a couple of European countries that distribution companies were not allowed to actually use their meter data, for instance, that they collected for other purposes than just market facilitation. And if they use it, it needs to be anonymized. Right? And there are ways that regulation can actually increase, but also prevent digital adoption. So that's something we actually need to start working on and start thinking about. Challenges in integrating OT data in IT systems, right? The infamous IT-OT convergence, right? This has been a promise that has been over the market since 2014, right? But somehow it's still difficult to actually, it seems to be still two worlds, right, within distribution company. We see these walls and clear lines of demarcation between the IT world and the OT world dissolve, right? But there's still loads of work to be done, right? Basically driven by the OT knowledge that is needed and required to actually interpret OT data in IT systems. But we see an adoption in this case as well, and there is clear value in doing so. Balancing out, build out, and flexibility, right? Remember the poll earlier this morning where people say all of the above, right? Is it either flexibility or infrastructure? It will constantly be a decision-making process, right? Think about grid planning and simulation, right? Coming back again to digital twins and asset data that can help you to actually make educated decisions on where you need to strengthen your grid first, on high, medium, and eventually also in low voltage, right? Because currently the emphasis on digitization, but a lot of distribution companies is on high and medium voltage. The next step will be low voltage, where the problems will be similar as what we've seen everywhere else. Number 5, the need to prioritize skills to be digital, right? In order to actually increase overall adoption, digital needs to be completely embedded on the business side. And what we see in a lot of distribution companies do is actually have a lot of digital experience and digital capabilities on the IT side and technology side, but it's lacking on the business side. And I think the collaboration between business and IT with a digital mindset of both of them is going to be crucial, right, to actually be successful in digitizing distribution companies. And last but not least, and there's still 1 minute left, a goal-oriented transformation for ready-to-use technology, which basically means create a technology roadmap. Technology is not the one preventing digitization, it's the one that actually accelerates it, right? And you need to have a clear roadmap, right, that is defined between both business and IT to actually drive that. And by creating that digital transformation for distribution companies, right, in the next couple of years, I'm very certain, right, together with the working group, that the distribution companies in Europe will be ready to face the challenges in the energy transition that is still ahead of us. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Pim. Brilliant. Thank you. Do you want to go and take a seat for a moment, and then I'll bring you back up in a bit, because what we're going to do is we're going to get a bit of reaction to the report, and then we're going to have a whole plethora of experts on this stage to give their views about what they see are the challenges ahead. But for the moment, Pim, thank you. What we thought we'd do is invite Siemens now to get their take on this and to get their reaction. So absolutely delighted to have with us today the CEO of Siemens Smart Infrastructure Grid Software. Please welcome Dr. Sabine Erlinghagen. Sabine. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for Pim for presenting that study, because obviously CEO of Siemens Grid Software is my life, and grids are as well. And being a tech company, we thought as a reaction, what better could we do than just fast forwarding and imagining what a world would look like for a grid operator in that stage towards the North Star. And I just made my life very easy and gave you a glimpse of what that looks like just now. It's always nice to have a North Star a little bit more tangible and to know what it could feel like. And I think when we did this, I was reminded of a quote from Leonard Birnbaum, who said, "This is impossible to manage just by humans, you need AI." So this is where technology, where software, and where AI plays a big, big role in driving towards autonomous grid management. And let's dissect a little bit the underlying paradigms of how we get to the North Star that also the report was nicely pointing out, and the data-driven aspect of it. So we're coming from a world where grid management was always thought top-down. Centralized generation, transmission, and then distribution, and that was how grid management was done. In this world that we've just seen a glimpse of, it's actually flipping it on the head. It's a prosumer-centric grid management that we're thinking here. Flexibility is all about the C&I customers, but all about the consumers. And thinking it bottom-up, thinking it from the distribution grid is what we're thinking. And prosumer-centric grid management means nothing else than taking action on flexibility management. And there are so many different ways of thinking about flexibility management that, and I think the report said that also nicely, between build and operate, that we just wanted to dissect that a little bit and then show a way of how it can be put into action. And actually what flexibility management boils down to on the operations side is you detect the grid impact, low voltage, medium voltage, high voltage. And it's that sequence, if you think about DERs. You assess the flexibility potential, so you need to know how much is out there that you can tap into, and then you propose and you activate. That's what we've seen in the film. But it's not only operations, it starts, and it really starts with the planning, because that's where you impact the CapEx decisions. That's where you can know whether you get from 67 million down to 55. So again, it's detecting the grid impact, knowing which transformer has been overloaded over time, how many times, for what type of duration, understanding the flexibility potential with DRs that you can tap into, and then proposing non-wired alternatives already in your planning. And guess what? They're connected. And they're connected by data and by the digital twin. So the planning world and the operations world are connected by the same underlying representation of the grid, and the data that is needed to look at what has been planned, is been operated, and vice versa. It's just a matter of time span, whether it's the daily planning or the annual planning cycle that you're looking at. So that's just a quick reaction, trying to put into practice what we've just heard from the report. And it's about unlocking value with every step on that journey towards that North Star. That's very important to me. We are going away from big bang solutions, large monolithic systems. We need to create value with every step, really starting by identifying the gaps, identifying the challenges, having the transparency in the grid down to the low voltage level, where the DERs and where the prosumers are sitting, the visibility to understand the root cause, understanding the potential, and then the optimization both in the planning and in the operations. And that's my 2 seconds of shameless advertising. We will demo the steps to get there with GridScale X, and you will be the first ones to witness tomorrow our co-pilot for flexibility management. Thank you, and I'm looking forward for the panel discussion now.
I think that was 5 seconds of shameless advertising, not just 2. Sabine, thank you very much. Right, I'm going to bring a whole load of people up on stage now. We're just going to have a bit of a chat about what this means for the industry. So, Sabine, thank you very much. Pim, if you'd like to come and join us again. I'm also going to invite up the chairman of EDSO, the NDIS board member. Please welcome Christian Buchel. Christian, thank you very much. We have the co-chair of Digitalisation and Energy Task Force. We have Andrei Covatariu. Thank you very much, Andrei. David Kirkland from Oracle Energy and Water. Thank you very much. And Mikel Jimenez, the Global Grid Director, Tech Director at Huawei. Thank you very much. Come and join us. Yeah. Find yourself somewhere to perch. Good to see you all here. Really, really good to see you. Your penultimate slide, Sabine, said about the moving to digitalisation, what you needed to do. There was one word, fast. Moving fast. And I'm pretty sure that's what you would all agree, that speed is of the essence here. So, quick question to everyone here, including yourselves. Hands up if you believe we are moving fast enough towards digitalisation within the industry. Okay, well, at least we all agree on something. Oh, again, one gentleman. So you feel we are? Okay. Okay, I can see the look on your face. Like, if there is momentum and it's going in the right direction, so if you feel there is momentum, okay. If absolutely nowhere near fast enough. Oh. What does that mean? Grab a microphone.
Half a hand, maybe.
Half a hand. Half a hand. Okay. Where do you think we are? Fast enough? Not fast enough?
Not fast enough, but we are doing pretty well.
Not fast enough, but doing pretty well. Okay. Anybody else want to come in? David, what do you reckon?
I think there's momentum. I think we need to go quicker.
Yep.
And I think some of the barriers, I think we'll discuss it in the exploring the report.
Yeah, definitely barriers. That's what we'll get into. So are we all agreed there is some momentum, but it needs to be pushed along. Okay, let's talk about, I don't know whether to do barriers or benefits first. What would you rather do? Barriers or benefits? Barriers. Barriers? Oh, we're barriers. Okay. Let me just run along the line then, because I think we're probably all quite clear what the benefits are. Biggest barrier, just one word if you can.
Business case.
Getting the business case. As in having a real example, or?
Having a real example, what's the application, what value you're going to get from the data, and then convincing the executive to invest in collecting data and using data.
Okay, so it's having that case study, that pilot, that's something that you can go, let's do this, it's what it is.
Yes.
Okay, that tangible thing. Okay, Sabine, barrier?
I think there's a mental barrier to think that we need to have it all before we can even start. So that agile mindset of just saying go for incremental value and go for that incremental value fast. And this, like, together we have a habit of very long procurement processes, and that leads towards a behavior where you want to have everything that you might need in 5 years, and that's typically not how digitalization is unfolding.
Are you suggesting there's a sort of like some sort of inertia within?
There's just like ways, partly driven by regulation, of how purchase decisions are taken, see RFP processes and the likes. And if they're once in every 5 years, then you try to accumulate all what you ever need into that RFP, instead of saying, okay, what can help me the next 3 months? What can help me the next 6 months? And that is where speed is generated. Okay, so it's actually getting the right look ahead, the right time frame in mind, and what needs to be done.
I'll build on that, actually, because if I were to pick one, would be regulation. Probably regulation is not, so to speak, agile enough or adaptive enough for, you know, the digital transition. And I think that's where we need to actually focus on, especially going to 2030 and the targets that we need to achieve for that.
Quick show of hands if you think actually regulation is a huge issue or a huge barrier here. Okay, we had the point, we had the point made earlier that regulation can be both something to push along digitalisation, but also can be a barrier as well. So you're using it as a barrier, aren't you?
Specifically for DSOs and transmission system operators, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
May I answer by a question, please? Who in the room is on the operative side inside the DSOs, just to have a feeling? Please raise your hand.
You have one down here.
Okay. So this was my impression, that it's fascinating, yes, to see that everybody is speaking about DSOs from concealer side, from equipment side, and that people who are doing on the field are not so represented. So I'm very happy to be there, and this is why I will not speaking about barrier. Our job as entrepreneur and as chairman of all the DSOs in Europe is to do, yes, and to look for the opportunities and not to fear the barrier. So I come later on this.
Okay, so I totally understand that, and I understand the positivity and finding the way through. Let me put it a different way. What's the toughest thing to overcome? What is the toughest thing to overcome? So it's not a barrier as such, because I appreciate that you don't like the word barriers, but what is the toughest thing that you have to deal with?
Yeah, you see, I was, it's absolutely not what I was prepared for my team. When the presentation was made by Accenture of where you are here, it's very interesting, yes, and well done, well presented, to be as an industry evaluated by external and especially by consultants. It's well done, no question at all. For me, and maybe this is a part of your answer on your question, for me, the evaluation by the customer is for sure at least so important, yes? Because the customer experiences trigger the digitalization, what Sabine showed here. This is in the energy sector, but when I order a pizza in Paris, it's like a little bit, maybe different, but so for us as an industry, the customer experience on flexibility side, yes, when we launch call for tenders for flexibility on demand side, etc., you cannot do it without digital, yes. When you want to reach more productivity, yes, to be able to invest without increasing too much the bill for the consumer at the end, you need digitalization, you need IA, you need generative IA. And so this is why I think the customer transform deeply and very fast and strongly in the industry. And this is maybe the main driver.
Okay, okay, yeah. So, and that is either collaboration or not, and it's bringing everyone together. Okay.
Okay, so from my side, actually I was going to say regulation. I think it's very important.
Sorry, motivation.
Regulation. Regulation.
Oh, regulation, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So I want to add into that is also standardization is also very important, because we need to think not only on the requirements, but also how we can show compliance according to these requirements. But if I have to select other, just not to repeat the same thing, maybe it's to find the correct pilot projects to show the capabilities. So finding these opportunities to show a pilot project that covers different conditions that can be applied to a very high level of scenarios where we want to operate. This is something that would be very useful to transfer our knowledge to also the DSOs and other stakeholders that are involved.
So it's getting that knowledge partnership, the sharing partnership, and bringing everyone
this
together.
ecosystem is very important.
Yeah, and one ecosystem, you say. So everyone is speaking the same language, the same technical language. Okay. I know there was lots of different challenges that you sort of brought out within your report. Yep. Is there one that was overwhelming, you think?
Not necessarily one, right? I think it's a combination of a whole lot of challenges that you see, right? And I think most of them are already being mentioned. The difference is what we said, right? Between, for instance, the business value, the business case is a really important one. I think it was one of the former panelists that actually said there are so many good intentions, right? And there's a lot of innovation going on, but failure to scale, right? These kind of opportunities, these kind of things, has mostly to do about not technology, right, but by business adoption, right? As I said, as one of the main conclusions, right, there is, if you look at technology and IT, right, they're kind of driving these kind of innovative topics, right, working with consultants, technology partners to actually innovate, but it's the business adoption that I basically see as one of the major challenges in that case.
So it was you that said, David, about actually having the business case, the use case. So how do you, and I don't know whether this comes back to risk, how do you make that happen? So you've got all the innovation, you know, we've established today that there is all the innovation. There's obviously the desire, but how do you then make the two connected? You know, from your own point of view, your perspective.
Great question. It's recognizing that data in itself is an asset, and that asset drives value for the business. So collecting data for the sake of collecting data is not the purpose. You're collecting data to drive decisions, to drive different business processes, to unlock the IT convergence, which is a major barrier. We know, sharing that information across the business. So it's really recognizing the value of what you're investing in, but also bringing the business people in earlier in that process, rather than making it an IT decision. So you're actually seeing the business drive the need, which then drives the business case, which drives the value, earlier in the process, rather than it being seen as something which sits in the IT department as a, you know, a new innovation, a new something we're going to do. And
so, yeah, so does that mean actually a real sort of a change in a business organization, so that it's no longer within the IT department, it comes within the entire strategy?
It's business-led rather than IT-led, I would suggest. I wouldn't go as bold as to say you have to really change the organisation, because some organisations are already doing this. Yeah. It's changing the emphasis to being business-led rather than IT-led.
Okay. Andrei, do you want to come in there? Yeah.
But I think when we talk about innovation, we were talking about innovation. Innovation has a very different business case than other, let's say, products or services, right? So I hate to get back to my point on regulation, but I think innovation is key when it comes to digital and technologies, because innovation is costly. We need to understand that before, you know, getting into a business as usual scenario. It is costly. It takes time. You know, it takes a lot of time to actually produce economies of scale and so on. And coming back to my point on regulation, if we are aiming to, you know, regulate innovation the way we do with the operational efficiency, then we will fall short of actually scaling these solutions and these business cases, I think.
Go on, Christian.
In Europe, we made the choice, which is very positive, but it's a long time ago, to have regulation on one side, the grid, on the other side, the supplier/market. Is fine. I think for digitalization, so our concrete, yes, sorry, we are doer, yeah, only doer. The concrete reality is that you cannot say on digital, on one side you have the business people, on the other side you have the regulated people. Example, as an example, we had last winter in France, not this winter, the winter before. We were very short with generation because the nuclear problems in the meanwhile solved. And we were very short, yes? And we said, okay, we have deployed 35 million smart meters. How can we help the system? Not the DSO, the system, because we had no problem on the grid, distribution grid. How we can help the system? And together with the government, together with the suppliers, with all the value chain, I would say, we say, okay, we have digital meters. We have on the other side, on supplier side, we had off-peak tariffs. During this off-grid tariff, normally we warm the boilers, very concrete. How many boilers in France? 12 million. How many gigawatts does it mean? 2.3 gigawatts. And together, the value chain, we decided to not heat on the lunchtime, to not heat the boilers. We save 2.3 gigawatts. And so this is, sorry, a very concrete, basic, yeah, but concrete example that digital is not regulated on one side, and on the other side, the market, the customers in the middle, so we have to see it globally, I think.
Sabine.
I just think what you were just saying, Christian, is the potential for flexibility and how big it is. I mean, this morning we saw the 67 billion of invest coming potentially down to 55. And what you've just described in a very practical example is exactly how that can be done. And I think thanks to technology, it can be done at scale, but aligning that it needed the crisis to do the alignment. And if we can get kind of this learning and this alignment to happening outside of the crisis, or a crisis that is not as imminent because we are in a crisis, I think that then we can move mountains together in that industry, and we're a fingertip away from doing amazing things at scale.
Yeah,
just what Sabine said is exactly what happened after this concrete example. The government in France said, well done. Yeah. We test it now as permanent way to avoid big problems. And we tested 2 months ago in a region, only in a region, if we can, together with the suppliers and the customers, if we can reduce the power. Yes, you are subscribing 9 kilo, and you say 6 is enough if there is a crisis. Exactly what you said, Sabine.
I think it's also exemplified in the study that we've done, right? If you look at the 3 main steps in the value chain, right, go from build, operate, and maintain, you see the digital maturity on operate already increasing. And that's because of, well, basically we see already congestion issues, capacity issues, as you already described. We see that happening in other countries as well. And that's driving the overall digital maturity. I think what we've all agreed upon, right, is that the overall infrastructure build that is going to be required, right? We look at the 76 billion on an annual basis that's going to be invested into the distribution grid alone, right? If you just look at these numbers and the amount of people that are there, right, normally what we see in a lot of clients do is kind of a conditioned reaction, right? The scope is increasing, what do we need? We need more people. We just throw more people against it, but they're not there. Right, simply if you just look at, for instance, the power system engineering capacity that we have in order to do the grid calculations, to do the build, they're simply not there, right? And then the obvious choice, right, if the normal and traditional way of working is not going to be sufficient anymore, you need to look for other solutions. In that case, that's kind of where digital can help, to make data-driven solutions. And I agree completely, right? This is not something that you do in isolation, we do in an ecosystem. Right, that's what we've seen at one of our projects that we've done 2 years ago with a capacity issue, right? You cannot solve this just by yourself. It's the distribution company working with the transmission company, working with the customers, with the generation company, with the government to solve these kind of topics. And digital will play a crucial role. Data exchange will play a crucial role in these kind of topics. But I can clearly see the point. The moment that the necessity is there, the demand is there, digital maturity will increase.
I tell you what, though, I mean, it's absolutely, but I was just going to say that, you know, it shouldn't take a crisis to make you realize what you have to do. And I'm guessing that's where AI, machine learning then comes into it to sort of predict what possible scenarios there might be. David?
Yeah, just wanted to build on Pim's point there that, you know, each of the DSOs is facing the same challenge. It's not like one DSO's got this and nobody else. So as well as the vertical dialogue between transmission, generation, distribution, there should be more collaboration across the distribution company, more collaboration with experts in this field to bring them in to actually assist in that process, and that will bring some acceleration to the adoption of some of the, you know, digital outcomes.
And that I'm guessing, is where you're hoping this report will be. This sort of like sparks off the idea that, you know, for people in the same boat, and therefore, you know, you have to talk to each other because that is the way progress is made. Christian?
No, it's true to say that we are speaking from DSOs here. Yeah? DSO, you said we are no more DNO or DSO. Yes, we're for years now DSO, but we are more becoming collectors, not only distribution, yes? And when you have more than nearly 1 million in France, I think in Germany it's more than 2 million now, generators connected to the grid, they are the customers. And they drive the transformation, and it's true for the value chain. We have including on digital issues, we have very strong and very deep cooperation, both on European level with the TSOs, with NSOE, to be precise, myself with NSOE, but also in our countries, yes. When we discuss with regulators in Paris, we are often together, RTE, which is the TSO, and ourselves, because the answer is a collective answer.
I think there was a point, I mean, it's an overarching, let's say, topic that is being discussed, and you've pointed to that, data and AI. And I think when it comes to AI, and when it comes to data in general, I think the models that we have are as good, or the results from this model are as good as the data that is being fed to those models, right? Now, I've seen that the data component in your study scores quite high. I strongly think that, you know, I strongly hope actually that is the case for each DSOs. Not necessarily sure, but we have very different starting points, you know, geography-wise, social, economic, let's say, perspectives. And I think that's important to understand, especially when it comes to legacy systems and to lack of data, and to synthetic data may only give, move us so far. So I think it's important to understand that, and it's important to understand that data governance, to the point of the keynote speech, data governance is critical going forward, and to understand how to unlock basically system efficiency through data. And I don't think we are there yet.
So I totally agree, right? And part of the assessment was basically about the technology and the platforms that were there. We did not assess the data quality, right? Because that's it. And when you asked the question about major challenges, initially was hinging about, is it data quality or is it basically business adoption? It's quite equal, right? And I've seen many examples where we started with all great intentions, but halfway a project, for instance, about an asset twin implementation, we actually came to a conclusion we need to pivot this entire and start building on the data governance roadmap instead of a digital twin roadmap. But you're spot on.
Yeah, I think, as you said, the starting point is probably different. Nearly all the countries has now developed or are currently finishing their rollout of smart meters. When you look, nearly all countries, yes. Sorry for our colleagues from Germany. I used to be in a board in Germany, so I understand why it happens. The power of the data, I think, is not. We are surprised, really, the DSOs who have now for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years handling with data. We have more data than in telecommunication. It's impressive. Our colleagues from Spain, I think it's the member near Barcelona, UFG, I think, they developing with all the data they have by IA how to handle for severe climate events, both for rebuilding differently, but also to act after climate events. And it has been said by the CEO of PPC, we had Greece, we had Italy, Sicilia, we had France in November, we have north of Ireland in end of November. And so you see the power of data. It's not previsible what we can do with this. Yes, the power is wonderful, and we do need. Don't misunderstand me when I said it's amazing to see that everybody's speaking about us, but we do need the cooperation with all these people on the stage. Yes, we do need, because you have experiences of data in other fields, and seen from the customer, it's not different between a pizza and a kilowatt hour. Yeah? Sorry to be a little bit. Basic, but yes, data is probably the breakthrough by which we win capacity to accelerate integration of renewable and new uses, but also productivity. I insist on productivity, yes. If we want to invest all this money, we have to win productivity in our companies.
Yeah. Just on the question of data, I mean, it's having the right data, right? Or rather knowing what the right data is that you're going to look at. And when you're talking about climate events, we all know there are going to be increasing numbers of climate events. So this is what needs to be modeled. Let me just ask the audience, I mean, do you feel enough is made out of the data that your particular organization could harvest? Is there enough, or who feels that actually so much data is just going to waste and you could get so much more out of it? Yeah, okay. So there is a need to understand what data you have and what you could do with it. I'm very conscious of time, and there are lots of other sort of issues that we could talk about. So I'm just going to throw a few out to you and see what you might want to pick up on yourselves as well, if you would like. We've not mentioned people in as much as the people skills that are needed for this massive revolution. And that's an issue. And that's an issue across so many different industries. Yeah, go for it. And then Sabine as well, yeah.
I mean, first of all, if you go to a control room and you ask, like, how long it takes to train a control room operator to do their job, it's like for the lowest ranking job, it's 1 year, and then it's for the next ranking job another year, and for the next ranking job another year. And then it's people who do that job like 24/7 in shifts and the likes. If you go to the grid planning department and you look at like the studies that you need and the experience that you need to do those jobs, it's amazing. And I think the role that technology and digitalization can play is to make the UX and the co-pilots help make those jobs much easier. So we just deployed one of our technologies in a DSO, and the person said, "I've never seen that. I'm trained in a day." It wasn't a control room operator, but if the software is so intuitive, and if AI helps with co-pilot-like assistance, is recommending solutions, is pre-calculating things, then the burden on the scarce resource of people is lessening so much. And then the ability to bring new people into that job is easier, and the joy with which they do the job, so you retain them, is easier. And you need like less experts when you scale. So I think technology can play a huge role in making that a more solvable problem, because it's a big problem today.
And I'm sure then would also, not that we've got time to talk about this, but that plays into technology equity as well, because other areas will not have that sort of access, and then there's the question as to whether or not they should, or go on.
So I think the task force, we actually looked at jobs in the digital world, let's say in the energy and digital world. And we are not seeing that much of an issue, or more of an issue than there is for the energy transition itself. On the contrary, we actually see some sort of opportunities because we've seen some other industrial sectors or some other economic sectors that have transitioned to digital solutions way before the energy transition. So in that sense, some skills, some professionals are already trained in some, some of this, let's say, responsibilities, and we can actually, quote unquote, import some of the skills and some of these people to the energy transition and somehow leapfrog in some dimensions in that sense. And there are there's one opportunity in that, one challenge in that. The opportunity is also to address a bit the gender imbalance, because that would probably address a bit the imbalance that we have now in the energy sector that is leaning towards the male-dominated, let's say, spectrum. And then the challenge that we see is actually the age imbalance to increase actually a bit. Because we are seeing people in the energy sector that are it would take a bit more to upskill or reskill their capacities. So in that sense, if we are importing from other sectors, we may widen actually that gap, which is an issue in itself.
It is a huge conversation to suddenly start talking about a gender balance and how you tackle that, because that's a huge issue and a huge conversation. But if anyone knows how to do that and could sort that out, then actually maybe Sabine could tell us. David, you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, it's a good point for how you do the gender balance. But the two things we've spoken about this morning, and we brought it up today. One is about the ageing grid, but don't forget we've got an ageing workforce. There's a big number of the workforce who are in the energy sector today will retire in the next 10, 15 years. Where are you going to get the replacement for those people from? We talk about, and the second point is going to make, we talk about skills. The skills for the future aren't necessarily the skills that we've had historically in the energy sector. And it's recognising there's a transition in skill requirements as well as data acquisition, data analysts as well. So there's multiple things going on which are having a challenge for the DSO. How do you skill? If each DSO tries to solve this individually, that's going to be a major challenge, I think, in terms of how many people are in the market, how many people can you recruit, how many people can you bring into 30 different companies where pooling that expertise might be a better outcome.
And then you may be looking at standardized expertise as well.
From us, maybe it's my answer on your second question, the barrier. I not agree. Yes, of course, we can import and the skills, but you are speaking about engineers, yes? We need blue collars. We need millions of blue collars. And when we discuss on the board of EDSO, we have all the same problem. What we are doing, not only complaining, yes, we are entrepreneurs, so we try to do our best. We are creating schools from very young people, 14, 15, 16 years old, to help them to come into the sector, yes? And we do this, it depends in the countries, but often with the governments, with the Ministry of Education, and we take the problem, but we have the problem. We have really the problem, yes? In EDIS, we were looking for 4,000 people in a year to hire, yeah? It's quite impressive. And on skills side, it's like digital. It's transverse for everyone, including regulator. I don't know if regulators, but look, the regulation has also, I'm not on the market design, I'm on the thinking, way of thinking. We have to planify where we build the solar power. Yes, the grid, even if we are speeder we have digital, but it's not possible to build the grid in a week if the solar power is on 3 kilometers from the station. So we have the skills to develop, including on regulator side, is planification. And this is a new way of thinking.
We're very sadly out of time on this one, because this obviously this subject runs right the way through the whole Power Summit. We're going to be talking about this as we go. But I'd just very, very briefly like to go along the line and just in a couple of words, a thought for the room to go away with. Just a couple of words, David, that you would want them to, as they leave this room, to have in their mind.
only collect data that's going to drive value. Don't try and collect everything until you start doing something with the data you've got. Because when you start using the data, you'll easily identify the gaps of data that you do need to collect.
Perfect. No, that's all good. So pick the right data, keep the right data, and use it. Yeah, Sabine?
I would say look for incremental value. So unlock the value as fast as you possibly can. To solve a near-term problem fast than to solve the world's hunger problems in 5 years.
Perfect.
Maybe at least start wiring for today. I know it's not a catchy, title for a report or for a panel or for a good hashtag, but at least start wiring for today.
Yep. Do it now. Yep. Have the conversations as you leave the room as to what can be done. Okay.
I would say electrify. Second, invest, massively invest, not only in copper, but also in digital. And thirdly, I would say secure, this is for Europe, for the sake of Europe, secure the industrial value chain, yes, for both our climate goals, but also for our sovereignty.
Thank you. Miguel?
From my side, I think it's important to remember that digitalization is coming from at all levels, not only at operators, but also we have to look at device and generators themselves. So smart technology is very important. And again, remember about the regulation. That is very, very important for us.
Thank you.
Basically, plain and simple. The technology is there. Technology is never the barrier in that case. Think about the business and do it together.
And read the report.
Exactly. Read the report, for sure. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please thank all our panelists. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.